small projects that they'd like to donate to sale for the club. That's always encouraged. So sorry. Let's see, about 20 members attended the sawmill demonstration out at Don Frank's house. Don put on a wonderful hosted event where he showed us how he can take a large log and make it into small usable pieces with using his manual sawmill, and he's added a lot of things that make it less manual than has to be. So very interesting. Very if you want to go to the next slide, I think I got a few more pictures there. Look at this truck bed. He had stuff to eat, he had coffee, and he was ready for us. So if you can see up there, we were playing Pictionary on a piece of wood. Actually, he's showing us how you attack a log with the saw there. You can see the size of log that we cut down that day. You can see Mike hard at work over here pulling off the first, probably the second layer of log that he had cut off. And then ultimately came in with a chainsaw and chopped them up into nice, about 16 by 16 chunks, as well as some smaller chunks that were more in-grain oriented. But had a wonderful morning. It wasn't too hot. We had shade. We had a lot of people show up. So great event. And Don, I want to thank you again. That was tremendous. Okay, moving on. Oh, last of my announcements is not on the PowerPoint, and I just kind of failed to get it in there, but couldn't help but mention the fact that long-time member Bill Kuhlman passed away on August 5th. Those that know him, like me, will miss him. Bill was joined in 2004, so he's about a 20-year member. He reached the Hall of Fame, our Hall of Fame, Club's Hall of Fame in 2015, and he became a legend in 2019. To be a legend, you have a lot of criteria to have done for the club as a participating member, and Bill met those qualifications. He was a great guy, and he's going to be missed, and our thoughts go out to his family and in this time, I guess. So I wanted to mention that if anybody needs any information, I think there was an email that Kevin had sent out that had a link to some of the funeral services and things that I believe are already passed at this point. So moving on, open shop. We're still open every Saturday morning from 8:30 to 12, every Wednesday and Thursday evening from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. with the exception of the third Wednesday of each month, because the guild has their monthly meeting that night. My note to everybody is help keep the shop clean and organized, and end your cleanup with a vacuum. We now have a active building security system, so our openers need to be aware of that. I think they all are, but you do have to deactivate it if you're the first one to open the building. As a reminder, if there's not a lot of people in the building, you might find the doors are locked on a day where we have open shop. If you can't get in the front door, go to the back door and ring the doorbell. We do have, I think, 3 different buzzers now so that we can hear it back in the shop, so that it does ring back there. And somebody will let you in. Oh, and always please report any problems with equipment or the shop in general to the board. We'll see if we can't take care of it or find the right person to take care of it. Thank you, David Alexander, for keeping the bandsaw running. Take advantage of our open shop days and nights. There's no better way to improve your skills than turn in with a group where you can ask questions, share new ideas, see new techniques, and have direct access to wood tools and equipment. So take advantage of that if you can. Oh, our help wanted. If you have tools that are in decent condition, but you just don't use them or want them anymore, please consider donating them to the club, and we'll put them up for sale and use the monies towards the club. It helps the club, well, it helps you keep your shop clean. The club is also it's still in need of some additional openers. Basically, I think what we really need are some backups for the openers. We did get a new opener this last month, so I'm not sure exactly who that was, but I do appreciate that you have volunteered for that.
Glenn Bradford
Glenn,
volunteered. Glenn Bradford volunteered
okay,
to be a Saturday one.
he's going to be the second Saturday.
Yeah.
Okay. Glenn Bradford, thank you very much. Phil Sykes, you know, has created an Instagram account and is looking for content. So if you have any photos, a small description of what your project was and how you got to it, or how you finished it, or any pertinent information, send those over to Phil. His email's up there. It's also in the members list. So, but if you can get some content to him, the more content we have, the better exposure our club has to the world. So that would be super. See Mike Thomas if you have a demonstration to share, or if you have a demonstration idea that you'd like to see. He lines up our demos, so talk to Mike right over there. Start turning those small projects that can be donated for sale at the Irish Festival, and we're also going to have a tent at the Spinach Festival. We're going to only be selling, we're not going to be demoing there. So we'll be using some of those items from the Irish Festival for the Spinach Festival sale as well. Upcoming activities and events. We got a First Fridays event on Friday, September 6th. This is going to be a little odd because it falls right after the Irish Festival and the day before the Spinach Festival. But we're going to try to be here and be actively showing the shop, and then have some tables out with some items on them. So if you'd like to help, Friday, September 6th, be there. The board, I think an email just went out, just in the last day or two, about a skill building opportunity that we're trying out. So this Saturday from 12:30 till however long it kind of takes, we're planning on bringing in some extra grinders into the club shop and having stages of different types of sharpening methods. So it's really geared towards those members that don't really aren't comfortable with sharpening yet, or maybe have a new tool, they don't know how to get it into the right grind or such. We're going to have some experience there that could help you through that, and I want it to be kind of a hands-on thing, so that you're actually learning what you're doing and not just watching it. There's no cost, but donations will be accepted. We'll probably have a donation bowl there if it's worthwhile to you. Drop something in the donation bowl. Looking for project info or ideas. Everybody knows that we got a library back there, and there is a Woodturners area in that library where you can check out different videos. That's what my note was over here. Magazines, books, and DVDs. Check them out as needed. I think right now we don't really have a true checkout system other than the honor system. So just honor that. That'll be good. If you're looking for information regarding club activities, I would say the best place to go would be our website, KCWT.org. There's also information that can be found in the Wood Chips newsletter that comes out monthly, or simply ask one of the board members. I think you guys know who we are, but our board members, if you want to raise your hand up so people can. We've got about 5 or 6 of them here, so feel free to ask any of us. Okay, that gets me through my announcements. We got a good demo to go to tonight, but before we get started with that, I'm going to introduce Phil Sykes and give us a safety minute.
Thank you, Chris. Should I not use this mic? Is this the one that makes a bunch of noise?
It sounds pretty good.
Sounds all right now, right? Yeah. I love this image here, of the man getting stuck or the person getting stuck in the lathe. I'm pretty sure that's a metal lathe though, because it's got a carriage on it, so it's the wrong meeting. I was gonna talk about tool rest height and tool rest safety, but we're gonna skip that tonight because I do not have a lathe to show that on. And Chris didn't want to hold tool rest for me to do that. He was willing. Yeah. So instead, we're gonna talk about machine safety briefly. I believe we're gonna be talking about using a table saw tonight. How many of you have used a table saw before? Excellent. How many of you know all the safety precautions about using table saw? Okay, yeah. So as a reminder, if you're using a tool you haven't used in a while, especially a machine with a sharp rotating blade, I recommend that you take a few minutes to familiarize yourself with the safety precautions on that machine, such as starting, stopping, where your hand should be, maybe even practice making a few cuts prior to putting that expensive piece of wood on the machine to make that cut as well. So just a reminder, if you haven't used a tool in a while, don't forget to review the safety precautions for that too. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kevin Neelley. I'm going to demonstrate the use of an accessory I invented for safely cutting ring segments for wedgie sleds. I have named this accessory my segment sweeper. The purpose of the segment sweeper is to safely sweep the cutoff segment away from the saw blade to help protect your fingers and also to prevent the cutoff segment from contacting the saw blade teeth. I will now show my segment sweeper in action by cutting 12 segments for a ring. The sled I am using is a wedgie-less wedgie sled I bought from Peter Marken woodturning.com. Here we go. Okay, I'm going to cut the end off this board. Here we go. The left-hand sled was slightly modified by using Turner's tape to add three 32nd-inch thick runners to the underside of the sled in order to raise the top surface of the sled. I needed to raise the surface of the left-hand sled because of the addition of my segment sweeper to the right-hand cutoff table. The right-hand cutoff table was modified by adding my segment sweeper using one countersunk screw. That's the only modification. The segment sweeper is made from one piece of flat 1/8" plywood and cut to fit against the saw blade. The top surface of the segment sweeper is slightly below the surface of the left-hand sled. And that's the reason for the addition of 3/32 inch strips to the left-hand sled. I added a piece of thin veneer to the segment sweeper to sweep away the cutoff segment. The veneer touches the spinning saw blade during the segment cut and is shaped so it rides under the overhang of the spinning carbide blade tips. The 1/8 inch plywood of the segment sweeper never touches the saw blade. This projection at the lower left of the segment sweeper is filed to contact the left-hand sled when the segment sweeper is in the exact position for cutting. Again, the segment sweeper plywood never touches the saw blade, only the veneer. This photo shows the segment sweeper removed and provides a better view of the veneer and how it is glued on to the side of the segment sweeper. This photo shows the veneer slightly bent to the left. It's so it contacts the saw blade before the segment sweeper contacts the left-hand sled. If you ever find the veneer bent to the right or not bent to the right position, you can moisten the veneer and hold it that way until it dries, and then it should stay bent in the right position. Also, the veneer seems to act as a shield to keep the saw blade breeze from blowing the cutoff segment off the segment sweeper. Okay, I'm going to sand all the segments. I sand all 6 sides because they have generally little hairs near the cut joint, and if the hairs get in between the segments when I'm gluing, it'll ruin the ring. So I'll show you the sanding block I use. I like this sanding block. The surface is very, very flat. So when I sand a segment, it has a nice flat surface, and it's the surface that I'm sanding stays flat. Okay, the segments are all sanded. I'm going to arrange them in a ring and put a rubber band around it, and we'll see how well I cut the segment angles. This is usually a formality with using one of Peter Marken's sleds because it does such a great job cutting the angles. Okay, put that together and it looks excellent. Not perfect, but pretty darn good. There's a lot of things that can go wrong when you're trying to cut a perfect ring. It's possible to just cut them wrong. The way you cut it, the way you hold the board, if the board slides a little bit during the cut, if the length of the segment is slightly off, as you cut some perfect and you cut, say, one not quite right. Well, anyhow, a lot of things can happen. But if you check it after they're all cut, you can always cut another one if you see a segment that's obviously cut bad. I can see one segment here. It looks like it wavered a little bit during the saw cut, but I think I'm calling it good because it's so close that I'm not going to worry about it. So there's more than one way to glue these things. If you want to glue them all up at once and rubber band it, do it fast, but it can be done. I glue things on a board that has masonite on top of it so it doesn't stick. So the bottom side of the segmented ring, when it's glued, is going to be perfectly flat because it's going to be glued against a very flat plane. Now the top, I don't really care if it's flat or not because I can flatten it on the sander or I can flatten it on the lathe as I'm gluing up segments in a construction. So I'm going to glue up the way I usually glue up is pairs of segments, and it'll take a little bit of time, but you'll see it's going to make a perfect glue up. Okay. Here we go. So I put a little glue on, and I use the other segment to smear it around. So it's got 100% glue on the joint. Then I hold them together for just a second or two, take my hand away, and it's glued. And the joint is perfect. As long as I make all the joints perfect, we can get a perfect ring with no gaps in any joint. So I make sure that the the segment is tight against the top of the board here, and that the joint is even. Okay, I've glued the pairs together. Now I'm going to glue some pairs to pairs. The idea is I'm going to make 2 half rings. And the half rings, I'll test to see how perfectly those half rings close up. And if they don't, I'll sand the butts. It's the joint of the half rings. I can do that pretty easily and make a perfect joint there. So that if each one of these pairs have glued together with perfect joints, eventually I'll have a ring with a perfect joint. So I'm just going to glue 2 pairs to pairs. I can't glue these together because I'm going to glue those to the ends to make 2 half rings. So I'm going to let that glue dry just for a minute, and then I'm going to glue the last pairs of segments on. Yeah, a minute's up. I'm putting just enough glue on there to completely coat the surface and to get a good glue joint. I use Titebond 2 glue. It's really good glue. It gives me enough time to do what I need to do. It doesn't dry too fast. There's other good glues. To tell you the truth, almost any woodworking glue will work fine. There's cabinet glues nowadays are really good glues. So I have 2 half rings. If I put them together, it's really pretty close. It's not perfect, but each one of these segments glued together has got a perfect joint. And if I make this joint right here perfect, I'll have a perfect ring. So I'm going to let this glue dry for a little bit, and then I'm going to sand the joint. I'm going to sand this joint right here. Okay, the 2 halves are gluing. It's now dry. I put a pencil mark on the top side of this ring, so I'd always know what is up and what is down. The downside is what I glued against this board right here, and it's very, very flat. So what I'm going to do is make sure that the bottom is as flat as it can be, and this joint here, the butt joint, I'm going to sand it. What I'm going to sand it with is the glass plate, 1/4-inch thick glass, and I've got 2 pieces of sandpaper, 80 grit, glued to it. So I'm going to do a little bit of this to the bottom. Very flat, very, very flat. Very, very flat. Now I'm going to sand the butt. Might be able to sand them both at the same time. It won't take too much. It takes a lot of sanding. Be better off sanding it with a disc sander or some other method. But this is fine for just a minor sanding, and that's all it takes with that Peter Marken sled. If you make your own sled, you may have to do a lot of sanding on the butt. So I'm going to test it. It looks pretty good. So I'm going to glue it. I'm going to glue it on the same piece of wood with masonite on top. Whoops. Oh, I caught that. I should sign up for the Royals. Okay, I'm gonna make sure it's all spread evenly. Make sure that the ends are proper, aligned, and I'm gonna put rubber band on it. In about a half an hour, I should be able to glue this to the base of the bowl or whatever it is. And just checking the top half, it's not very flat. It could be better. Sometimes I'll use rough sawn lumber for this, and the top is very uneven, even though the bottom is very flat. The top will be very uneven. So yeah, I don't care. I'll flatten it on the lathe right before I put and glue the next ring on. So I guess that's about it for gluing. I thought of something else to talk about. I was looking at this ring here, and right here, I have a little bit of a gap at the edge. It's from a bad saw cut. I could have, after I had test fitted the rings together and rubber banded it, I could have done a little sanding on that and made it better. But I can see that at the very end of the saw cut, it's perfect from here to here, but at the very last, I must have messed up a little bit. Maybe that was the first of the saw cut, maybe it's the end of the saw cut, but anyhow, I messed up a little bit. So anyhow, what I'm going to talk about now is if when you put the two halves together, you actually have a gap, and the gap is due to bad angle. So I'm going to show you how to fix that. The test piece here just required a little bit of sanding on the butts to get it together. But let's say you made your own sled. It's not a Peter Marken sled, and you had a gap right here. Here's how to adjust your angle and fix it. So I'm gonna say I'm measuring the gap right here, and this gap is, I'm gonna say it's 110 thousandths. That's a degree, maybe 110 thousandths of an inch. So I'm gonna put this over here, and I'll show you the calculations. So gap X in inches is equal to 110 thousandths. Now, the next thing we measure is the diameter. Now, what I'm going to try to find is the X in degrees. That'll tell me what kind of adjustment. So the diameter it's equal to 5" 887 thousandths. 5" 887 thousandths. So I calculate the circumference. Circumference is equal to pi times diameter. That's equal to, I'll get my phone out, calculate that. That is equal to 18.495 inches. Okay, now I do a proportion calculation. So the gap X in degrees is equal to this proportion. X degrees divided by 360 is equal to the gap X in inches, 0.110 inches divided by the circumference, and that's 18.495 inches. So X in degrees is equal to, I will do this calculation, 0.110 times 360 divided by 18.495 is equal to 2.141 degrees. So this gap, we had said that when we put the two half rings together glued, we ended up with a gap right here, and we calculated that to be 2.141 degrees. Okay, now the next thing is how much of an angle change do we need to make? So 2.141 degrees divided by 24. See, this is 12 sides, so there's 24 cuts to make 12 sides. So 2.141 divided by 24 is equal to, hang on, 0.089 inches. So inches, no, it's degrees. Thank goodness. So that's not really very much of a change. So it's going to be about 9/10 of a 9/100 of a degree change. That's not very much. So I can do that, and that's kind of equal to 0.1. I can do that pretty easily with the protractors I have. My table saw has a vernier scale, and I can do that in just about a second. And so I can change that and make it perfect. Now here's the other thing. If the gap is on the outside, right here, then okay, outside gap, you increase the angle. So whatever angle you had on your miter gauge, you'd increase that angle by 0.1. So it's not very much. Okay, if the gap is on the inside, all right, you do just the opposite. Let's decrease by 0.1 degrees. If you make that change and you make another test cut, a test ring, it's bound to be a lot closer. Unless you're just a bad cutter and everything is just random angles, you should actually be able to make a good change if you make that change. So that's it. I've done this for a lot of years, and it's worked out well for me. So thank you again, Kevin Neelley. Appreciate you watching my video about the segment sweeper. Bye.